Hi, my name is Stanley, and this is Old Money Life. Now imagine building the single largest private fortune in the history of the United States, a number so large it surpasses the entire gross domestic product of Portugal, and then driving yourself to a barbershop to get a $5 haircut while wearing a $10 flannel shirt you bought from your own store. That is not a joke. That is not a metaphor. That is the actual, documented, verified daily life of Sam Walton, the man who founded Walmart. Today, we are going to talk about how that philosophy, that almost stubborn, almost irrational commitment to cheapness, quietly compounded into $229 billion and counting, making the Walton family the wealthiest dynasty on the face of the earth. The Walton fortune in numbers, the scope of what we're actually talking about. Before we get into the story, and I promise you this story is one of the most fascinating we have ever covered on this channel, we need to spend a moment just sitting with the numbers. I find that when most people hear the phrase $229 billion, their brain simply refuses to process it. It sounds like a made-up figure. It sounds like the kind of number a child invents when trying to win an argument on a playground. But it is real. And once we break it down, I think you will understand why this family occupies a category entirely their own. As of 2025, the combined net worth of the Walton family, comprising the descendants of Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, sits at approximately $229 billion. To put that figure into its proper context, consider this. The entire gross domestic product of Greece, a country of 11 million people with thousands of years of civilization behind it, sits at roughly $240 billion. The Walton family, 6 individuals and a handful of trusts, are worth approximately the same amount as a sovereign European nation. That is not an exaggeration, that is just arithmetic. Now, Walmart itself, the engine that produced this fortune, is a number unto itself. The company operates more than 10,600 stores across 24 countries. It employs approximately 2.3 million people worldwide, making it the largest private employer on the planet Earth. In the United States alone, it is estimated that roughly 90% of Americans live within 10 miles of a Walmart store. Let that sink in. This is not a retail chain. This is infrastructure. This is the circulatory system of American consumer life. In 2024, Walmart reported annual revenue of approximately $648 billion. For reference, that figure places Walmart ahead of the individual GDPs of countries like Poland, Sweden, Belgium, and Argentina. And yet, crucially, what makes the Walton story different from the story of, say, Amazon or Apple, is that the Walton family has never lost control. They have never sold the machine. They have never handed the keys to a private equity firm or diluted their ownership through a wave of public offerings. Today, the Walton family still controls approximately 47% of Walmart's outstanding shares through Walton Enterprises LLC and the Walton Family Holdings Trust. Nearly half of the largest company in the world, still in the hands of one family, 3 generations after a man in a pickup truck pulled into a small Arkansas town and decided to open a shop. This, I believe, is the most underrated part of the story. Not the size of the fortune, but the retention of it. Most American family fortunes are gone within 3 generations. The Waltons have defied that trajectory entirely. And the reason why, as we are about to discover, starts not in a boardroom, not in a Wall Street deal, but in a small house in Kingfisher, Oklahoma, during the depths of the Great Depression. The man in the pickup truck. Sam Walton's origin story. Samuel Moore Walton was born on the 29th of March, 1918, in Kingfisher, Oklahoma. And if you want to understand everything that came after, the pickup truck, the $5 haircuts, the obsessive penny pinching that his own executives sometimes found maddening, You have to understand where Sam Walton came from and what he saw as a child. The Walton family was not destitute, but they were not comfortable either. His father, Thomas Walton, worked as a farm loan appraiser during the Depression, which meant that Sam grew up watching banks foreclose on family farms. He grew up watching neighbors lose everything. He grew up in a world where waste was not just imprudent, it was morally offensive. It was something that decent people simply did not do. This is not a minor biographical detail. This is the operating system on which the entire Walmart empire was eventually built. To help the family, young Sam delivered newspapers, sold magazine subscriptions, and raised and sold rabbits and pigeons. He was, by every account, relentlessly entrepreneurial from childhood. He graduated from the University of Missouri in 1940 with a degree in economics, having paid his own way in significant part through those early hustles and a series of odd jobs. He was notably president of the student body and a member of a military training program, qualities that suggested someone who understood both leadership and discipline from an early age. He spent 3 years in the United States Army during World War II, stationed domestically due to a minor heart condition that kept him from combat deployment. And it was after the war, in 1945, that Sam Walton made the first defining BET of his entrepreneurial life. He borrowed $20,000 from his father-in-law, a man named Leland Robson, and used it along with $5,000 of his own savings to purchase a Ben Franklin variety store franchise in Newport, Arkansas. Now here is where the story gets genuinely interesting, and this is one of those things I find myself randomly thinking about at 2 in the morning, because it is such a perfect encapsulation of what Sam Walton was. The Newport store was, by any traditional measure, a gamble. The lease was poorly structured. The previous owner had negotiated terms that gave the landlord the right to not renew, which eventually cost Sam the entire location. But in those 5 years running that Newport store, Sam Walton developed the 2 philosophical pillars that would later make him a billionaire. First, buy cheap. Second, sell cheap. Not as a temporary strategy, not as a promotional gimmick, but as a permanent, unshakable, almost religious commitment to the idea that volume at low margin beats exclusivity at high margin every single time. He had read this idea in trade magazines. He had observed it in the behavior of his customers, and he believed it with the fervor of a convert. When he lost the Newport store in 1950 due to that poorly negotiated lease, most men would have been broken. Sam Walton found a new location in Bentonville, Arkansas, opened a new 5 and dime, and started again. And this time, he had learned. Building the machine from Newport, Arkansas to global domination. By 1962, Sam Walton had built a small but profitable chain of variety stores across rural Arkansas and Missouri. He had also developed a theory about retail that the major players of the day, the Kmarts and the Sears of the world, considered almost comically misguided. Sam believed that small towns were underserved. He believed that if you put a large discount store in a small American town, a town that the big chains had written off as too small to bother with, those communities would respond with extraordinary loyalty. His competitors thought he was eccentric. His competitors were wrong. On the 2nd of July, 1962, Sam Walton opened the first official Walmart store in Rogers, Arkansas. The name was partly practical. Walton's 5 and dime had always been the family brand, but Sam wanted something broader, something with ambition baked into it. And so Walmart was born in a small Arkansas town, funded not by venture capital or Wall Street money, but by years of reinvested profit and a deeply personal conviction that cheap goods delivered with genuine service could build something extraordinary. The growth through the 1960s was methodical and deliberate. Sam did not chase the cities. He continued targeting towns with populations between 5,000 and 25,000, building stores where there was simply no competition. By 1969, Walmart had 18 stores and revenues of approximately $44 million. And then, in 1970, Sam made the decision that would transform everything. He took Walmart public on the New York Stock Exchange. The initial public offering priced shares at $16.50. Anyone who held those shares and never sold them is, depending on how many they purchased, probably not worried about money today. What I love about this period of the Walmart story is the operational obsession Sam brought to it. He flew his own small plane, a practice he kept up for decades, visiting stores personally and without announcement. He would walk the floor, talk to employees, check prices on individual items, and quiz store managers on their inventory turnover. His executives would joke that you never knew when Sam Walton might walk through your store's front door. And that uncertainty, that sense that the boss might appear at any moment and genuinely cared about what he found, created a culture of accountability that money alone could never have purchased. I spent 3 hours researching this specific period of Walmart's expansion, and what I found shocked me, frankly, because the rate of growth in the 1970s and 80s is almost difficult to believe when you see it charted. In 1972, there were 51 stores. By 1975, 125. By 1980, 276. By 1985, over 800. By 1990, over 1,500. This was not accidental growth. This was a machine, designed and tuned, and relentlessly optimized by a man who knew exactly what he was building. By 1985, Sam Walton was named the richest man in America by Forbes magazine. When reporters showed up to chronicle this moment, expecting to find a man surrounded by the trappings of extraordinary wealth, they found him at a coffee shop in Bentonville, Arkansas, wearing a Walmart baseball cap and a flannel shirt, talking about profit margins and employee morale. He seemed, by every account, genuinely unbothered by the attention. He had more stores to visit. The philosophy that built $229 billion, and the beautiful irony of it all. Now this is the chapter I have been looking forward to, because this is where the story stops being a business biography and starts being something closer to a philosophy lesson. Sam Walton drove a 1994 Ford F-150 pickup truck. Not because he could not afford otherwise. At various points in his life, he was the wealthiest human being on the planet Earth. He drove the pickup because he believed that ostentation was waste, and waste was the enemy of everything he had built. His haircuts cost $5. He wore clothes he bought from his own store. He carried his own lunch in a paper bag. And here is what I think most people miss about that. Sam Walton wearing Walmart clothes was not a publicity stunt. It was not brand management cooked up by a communications team. He was not performing frugality. He was living it. And there is an enormous difference between those two things. By living cheaply and visibly, Sam Walton was sending a message to every employee, every manager, every supplier that said this company does not waste money. Not because it cannot afford to, but because waste is philosophically incompatible with what we are doing here. Every unnecessary dollar spent is a dollar stolen from a customer's lower price. And lower prices for customers was the entire point of the enterprise. This was not a personality quirk. It was the operating principle of the whole machine. The Walton family, to their credit, has largely continued the tradition. Jim Walton drove a 2003 Dodge Dakota truck for years past, the point where most people would have quietly upgraded. Alice Walton, worth over $70 billion, has been photographed at local Fort Worth restaurants, eating without fanfare or entourage. The irony is beautiful, and as we will see, not without its contradictions. Sam's death and the great transfer of wealth. In 1990, Sam Walton was diagnosed with hairy cell leukemia, a rare form of blood cancer. He continued working. He continued visiting stores. He continued flying that small plane to towns across America to walk the aisles of his own shops and talk to his employees. In 1992, his condition worsened and transitioned into multiple myeloma, a cancer of the plasma cells. He was 74 years old, and he was still, by every account, thinking about the company. On the 18th of April 1992, Sam Walton died in Columbia, Missouri. In the weeks before his death, he received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President George H.W. Bush, a ceremony held at a Walmart in Bentonville because Sam had asked for it. Of course he had. Now, the transfer of wealth that followed Sam's death is a story that does not get nearly enough attention, and I think that is a mistake, because it is one of the most consequential acts of estate planning in American financial history. Sam and Helen Walton had spent years working with lawyers and financial advisors to structure their estate in a way that would preserve family control of Walmart across generations. The primary vehicle for this was Walton Enterprises LLC, a family holding company that pooled the family's Walmart shares into a single entity, preventing any individual heir from selling their stake independently and fracturing the family's collective ownership of the company. The scale of the inheritance was staggering. At the time of Sam's death, the Walton family fortune was estimated at approximately $23 billion, already the largest family fortune in American history. Helen Walton, who survived her husband by 14 years, dying in 2007, received the majority of the estate. The four Walton children, Rob, John, Jim, and Alice, each received substantial trusts structured to maintain their Walmart shareholdings intact, and crucially, those structures have held across 3 decades of market fluctuations, family dynamics, legal challenges, and the ordinary human drama that tends to accompany enormous inherited wealth. The Walton family has not broken the machine. They have continued to own it. It is also worth noting that the Walton estate created significant pressure on American tax law. The sheer scale of the wealth involved, and the lengths to which the family went to preserve it across generations through trusts and holding structures, became a focal point in political debates about inheritance taxes and estate planning throughout the 1990s and into the 2000s. The Walton family was not merely heirs. They were, in a very real sense, a case study in the architecture of dynastic wealth. The heirs, 4 very different people sitting on the same mountain of money. Sam and Helen Walton had 4 children, and I find it genuinely fascinating how differently each of them has engaged with the fortune they inherited, because in some ways their individual stories tell us more about the nature of inherited wealth than any number of financial analyses could. The eldest is Samuel Robson Walton, known as Rob, born in 1944. Rob served as chairman of Walmart's board of directors from 1992 until 2015, a 23-year tenure that placed him at the center of the company's transformation from a large American retailer into a global commercial empire. Rob is by temperament the most private of the Walton siblings. He has a known passion for rare automobiles and vintage cars, owning a collection that includes some of the most sought-after vehicles in the world. He has also been involved in various philanthropic endeavors through the Walton Family Foundation. In 2015, Rob stepped down as chairman, replaced by Greg Penner, his son-in-law, ensuring that family influence on the board remained intact even as the title changed hands. Rob's net worth, as of 2025, sits at approximately $70 billion. John Thomas Walton, the second son, born in 1946, was in many ways the most adventurous of Sam's children, and his story is the most bittersweet. A Vietnam War veteran who served with the Green Berets and was awarded the Silver Star for gallantry, John Walton returned from war with a quiet intensity that defined the rest of his life. He became a passionate advocate for education reform, funding charter school initiatives and school voucher programs through the Walton Family Foundation, with a personal conviction that went well beyond the obligations of inherited wealth. He flew his own plane, adventurous in a way that echoed his father. Tragically, on the 27th of June 2005, John Walton died in a crash of an experimental ultralight aircraft near Jackson Hole, Wyoming. He was 58 years old. His portion of the Walton fortune passed to his son Lucas, who has continued and deepened his father's philanthropic commitments in ways that I think would have made John Walton enormously proud. James Carr Walton, known as Jim, born in 1948, is perhaps the most quietly powerful of Sam's surviving children. Jim has spent his career building and running Arvis Bank, a regional financial institution based in Bentonville that operates across Arkansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, and Kansas, with more than $20 billion in assets. He is, in other words, not merely an heir. He is an operator, someone who took a piece of his inheritance and used it to build something new. Jim is also the most conventionally frugal of the Walton siblings in the tradition of his father, famously understated in his lifestyle and deeply private in his personal affairs. His net worth as of 2025 is approximately $71 billion. And then there is Alice Louise Walton, born in 1949, and by any measure, the most publicly distinctive of Sam Walton's children. Alice is the family's collector, the aesthete, the one who looked at a $229 billion fortune and decided the most interesting thing to do with her portion of it was build what is now widely considered the finest collection of American art ever assembled. The Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art in Bentonville, Arkansas, which Alice founded and which opened in 2011, houses works by Winslow Homer, Georgia O'Keeffe, Jackson Pollock, Andy Warhol, and dozens of other masters of American visual culture. Admission is free. I actually visited Crystal Bridges last year, and I want to say something on the record here because I think it matters. I went in expecting to be impressed, and I came out genuinely moved. There is something about a museum of that caliber in Bentonville, Arkansas, of all places, that feels like a statement about what money can mean when it is pointed in the right direction. Alice has also had a more complicated public history than her brothers. She has been involved in legal matters related to driving incidents over the years, none of which resulted in serious legal consequence, but which generated the kind of press coverage that reminds you that no fortune, however large, fully insulates a person from ordinary human fallibility. Her net worth as of 2025 is approximately $77 billion, making her the wealthiest woman in the world. Then there is Lucas Walton, John's son and Sam's grandson, now in his late 30s, who has become in many ways the most interesting member of the third generation. Lucas has channeled his portion of the fortune, estimated at approximately $28 billion, almost entirely into sustainability and environmental philanthropy through the Builders Initiative, a foundation focused on clean energy, sustainable food systems, and conservation. He is quiet, rarely photographed, rarely quoted, and by all available evidence, deeply serious about the work. He is perhaps the clearest evidence that the Walton family's relationship with its fortune is more complicated and more varied than the public narrative tends to allow. The shadow side. I would be doing this story a significant disservice if I told it only as a triumph. The Walmart story, like most stories of this scale and consequence, has a shadow side. That shadow side is real, and it is large, and it deserves to be looked at directly. The destruction of Main Street America is the charge most commonly leveled at Walmart, and the evidence supporting it is difficult to dismiss. Multiple academic studies conducted throughout the 1990s and the 2000s documented the pattern clearly. When a Walmart store opens in a small American town, a significant percentage of local small businesses, hardware stores, clothing shops, and general merchandise retailers close within 2 to 5 years. The prices Walmart offers are simply impossible for a small independent retailer to match, because no small independent retailer has Walmart's purchasing power, logistics infrastructure, or supplier relationships. The result, repeated across thousands of American communities, has been the hollowing out of downtown commercial districts that in many cases have never recovered. Sam Walton was asked about this dynamic directly and repeatedly throughout his life. His response was consistent and, depending on your perspective, either admirably honest or breathtakingly callous. He argued that lower prices benefited consumers more than they harmed small business owners. He argued that the net effect of Walmart on a community's economy was positive because the money saved by residents on everyday purchases circulated back through the local economy in other ways. Economists have debated this claim vigorously for 3 decades, and the honest answer is that the evidence is genuinely mixed, which is perhaps the most unsatisfying possible conclusion. Then, there are the labor practices. Walmart has been the subject of sustained criticism, legal challenge, and public controversy regarding its treatment of employees for the better part of 3 decades. The most damaging of these controversies has been the documented pattern of Walmart wages being low enough that a significant proportion of the company's American workforce has qualified for government assistance programs, including food stamps, Medicaid, and housing assistance. A 2004 study conducted for the House Education and Workforce Committee estimated that a single Walmart store of 200 employees cost federal taxpayers approximately $900,000 per year in public assistance to those workers. Critics argued, with considerable force, that this represented a form of corporate subsidy, that American taxpayers were, in effect, supplementing Walmart's labor costs. Walmart has consistently disputed these characterizations, pointing to its starting wages, which have risen meaningfully in recent years, its employee benefits, and its history of promoting from within. The company raised its minimum starting wage to $14 per hour in 2023, a figure still below what many labor advocates consider a living wage in most American cities, but a genuine and significant increase from historical levels. The gender discrimination lawsuit known as Dukes versus Walmart, which at one point represented approximately 1.5 million current and former female Walmart employees, and was the largest employment discrimination class action in American history, is also a chapter of this story that cannot be ignored. The case alleged systematic discrimination against women in pay and promotions across the company's store management structure. The Supreme Court ultimately ruled in 2011 that the class could not proceed as a unified action due to the decentralized nature of Walmart's management decisions, effectively ending the case in the company's favor on procedural grounds. But the underlying allegations, supported by substantial statistical evidence of pay disparities, did not simply disappear with the legal ruling. And then there is the overseas manufacturing question, the one that, frankly, sits in some tension with the family's American heartland mythology. Walmart sources an enormous proportion of its merchandise from factories in China, Bangladesh, Vietnam, and other low-wage manufacturing nations. This is not unique to Walmart. It is a feature of the entire fast fashion and mass retail industry. It represents a particular irony in the Walton story, because the very low prices that Sam Walton celebrated as his gift to working-class Americans were achieved in significant part by moving manufacturing jobs out of working-class American communities and into overseas factories where labor costs were dramatically lower. These are not simple contradictions to resolve, and I do not think the Walton family's story is made less interesting or even less admirable in some respects by acknowledging them. But any honest telling of how $229 billion was built has to include the full cost of the construction. What this story actually means and why I think about it more than I should. I have been sitting on this story for 6 months because I wanted to make sure I got every detail right before sharing it with you. And in that time, the question I keep returning to is this: what does the Walton story actually mean? Not as a business case study, not as a Forbes list entry, but as a human story about what we value and what we build and what we leave behind. Here is what I keep coming back to. Sam Walton started with $5,000 of his own money and a borrowed $20,000 and a lease on a small store in Newport, Arkansas. He died as one of the richest human beings who had ever lived. And in between those two moments, he drove the same kind of pickup truck, ate at the same kind of diners, wore the same kind of clothes, and held the same basic values. The fortune changed. He did not, or at least he tried not to. And whether you find that admirable or infuriating, or some combination of both, probably says something interesting about your own relationship with money. The children and grandchildren of Sam Walton are by every visible measure trying to do something meaningful with what they inherited. Rob built and maintained the company for 2 decades. John championed education reform until the day he died in a plane crash over Wyoming. Jim built a bank. Alice built a museum that gives free admission to everyone who walks through the door. Lucas is trying to help save the planet. These are not the activities of people who are simply consuming their inheritance. They are, in their various ways, trying to justify it. And yet, the shadow remains. The small towns without hardware stores, the employees on food stamps, the factories in Shenzhen and Dhaka. The contradictions do not cancel out the achievements, but they do complicate them. And I think complication is closer to truth than simplicity almost always. What the Walton family built is, by any objective measure, one of the most consequential commercial enterprises in human history. $229 billion is not just a number. It is the accumulated result of billions of individual transactions, billions of people choosing to buy something at Walmart rather than somewhere else because the price was lower and the store was closer and the parking was easy. Sam Walton understood something about how ordinary people live because he had lived that way himself, and he built a machine to serve those people. And the machine worked beyond anything he could probably have imagined on that April morning in 1945 when he walked into a Ben Franklin variety store in Newport, Arkansas with $25,000 and a plan. He wore his own store's clothes to the end. And honestly, I think that might be the most interesting fact in this entire story. I am Stanley. This is Old Money Life. Thank you for spending this time with me. If there is a family dynasty, a business empire, or a story of wealth and consequence that you would like us to cover next, leave it in the comments below. We read everything and we take your suggestions seriously. Until next time, cheers.